Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Dr. Ana Valdez with the Latinx Education Collaborative. Super excited to be with you today and hope that everyone out in LEC land is excited as I am to meet our next guest. It is Cruz Gallegos, who will be the new principal at Black Bob Elementary out of the Olathe School District. And without further ado, let's bring on Cruz and let's get the chat started with him.
Hi guys, how are you doing, Anna?
Good, Cruz. Nice to meet you. Nice to have you on our little show here. It's an easy conversation. We ask some questions. You give us some great answers, inspire us, give us your insight, and then we go from there. Super excited to have you join us. I just shared with everyone that you are going to be the new principal at Black Bob Elementary School in the Olathe School District, starting in July, correct?
Yeah, I'll be there starting next month.
Yeah, well, fantastic. Just like in a few weeks. So fantastic. But before we get into what you're going to be doing for the next few weeks, let's learn a little bit more about who you are, why you chose education, and kind of what your journey. And I'm really curious about something I read in regards to 3 rings. And I know how you prioritize those, how I would want my husband to prioritize those. But let's just get started with a little bit of your background. I know that you're from Kansas originally, Topeka. So go ahead and share that.
Yeah, no, I grew up in Topeka. I take great pride in talking about my father because he was un inmigrante de Michoacán, Mexico, and we talked a little bit about Michoacán being there's a lot of Michoacán people from Michoacán in Northeast Kansas, and so I think I was very praise God that he was able to come when he was younger, and he became a citizen later on as a teenager, and so obviously his family took a lot of risk, and so I take great pride in that because of their sacrifice for our family to be here in the United States. And so I always share the 3 things my father always taught us growing up were family was first, our faith, and then education, because of the doors that it could open. And so ever since we were young, I always prioritized education, and I knew it was important. It didn't mean I always tried my best, but I knew it was important conceptually. And so as I grew older, I took the faith aspect pretty important as well, as I joined the Catholic seminary for a short time after Topeka High School, and I was able to get a really good education in the sense that we studied philosophy and then theology, of course, but it was through philosophy that I started learning more, not what to think, but how to think. And I think that changed a lot of my perspective on education in general, because it felt for one of the first times our professors wanted us to learn how to strategically walk through even our most basic beliefs in life. And I think I learned a lot through that. And so education became a priority, especially once we got to theology school in St. Louis. I was told by a professor that if I were to ever discern out and not become a priest, he would hope I'd become an educator. And so that's what had happened. And before I knew it, I was in a classroom.
Wow, that's really truly divine inspiration. But let's back up a little bit, because you said a couple of great pearls that I want to unpack for the audience. So you talked about your family being from Michoacan, and before we came on air, we had a little chat, and my family also is from Michoacan, and Tanguansicoro. And so for everybody in Argentine, KCK, hey, Tanga's in the house. So it's always exciting to meet other people from Michoacan. My great grandparents and grandfather came there and about 100 years ago, or over 100 years ago. And so I love the fact that there is that connection with you in regards to hometown goodness. But it's funny, you were talking about your origin story and about how you thought the religious calling, the religious life was a calling for you. And, my origin story, and I always share this with everyone, that I wanted to become a teacher so bad. And I was in Catholic grade school.
Yeah.
And I thought to become a teacher, like, mind you, it's an 8-year-old
Yeah,
mindset. To become a teacher, I had to become a nun.
yeah,
And so I love the fact
that's fair. That's right.
I love the fact that you were like, "Oh, hey, I'm going to go to seminary," and then somebody said, maybe you should think about teaching.
Yeah, that's
And so when I told my mom, she was just like, "Well, maybe you should think about, teaching instead of becoming a nun."
yeah.
And so, yeah, my husband's very appreciative that I chose a different route than the convent.
Yeah, he's celebrating.
But yeah, so that's a fantastic. And so, so you got some inspiration to pursue your educational pathway. And what happened after seminary school and you found yourself in the classroom? What happened then?
Yeah, that's a great question. Well, it wasn't. I think things moved rather quickly. That was probably where I went. It felt like we went from 2019 to 2025. Right now, I don't think there were years in between. It just went so fast. But I do remember I told one of my professors, Father Mason, that I wanted to probably become a principal at some point because I'd felt a desire for leadership, and he told me, which I'll never forget. His piece of advice was, "Well, then you better stop caring what people think about you." And and I think he hit the nail on the head because at that time I was pretty preoccupied with what others thought of me, and um, I've learned over time great humility in knowing that the perception of leadership was something that I used to glorify and dream about to some degree, like, oh, this is great, I'll get all the attention that I've always wanted, or something. I don't know, there's so many lies in there. And then I quickly realized, once I got into the classroom, that I had to be a good teacher first. And I think when I was in Topeka, I was teaching at one of our lower income, so low socioeconomic, very diverse public school where I had just left the seminary in May, and then in August I was in a classroom, and they told me I was going to have a mentor, and I just, before I knew it, I was teaching math to fourth graders that were extremely concerned as to why this guy who had never taught before was teaching them, all their place value charts, and I was learning it with them. But I think quickly what I learned was the relationships are going to be extremely important, because if the kids don't trust you, they don't, obviously they're not going to really be able to learn, and they have to know, before they care about what you know, they have to know that you care. And so quickly, I saw that I had to love those 20 before I could love 200 or 2,000. And that was a prime, huge gift. And then I ended up in Turner.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to meet a lot more families, and I was very thankful to meet, being a district where there's 50% Latino.
Mm-hmm.
And so we had a lot of students that were, Latinos, and a lot of the conferences that I had with families became oriented towards their background and my background. And I was telling you earlier, I even met up with a family in Mexico with a girl that was in my class. They were in the same area, and so the connection drove very deep. And the reason I bring that up is because I didn't know, and I shouldn't have been surprised, but I didn't know how the students connect with you when you look like them. And I had an idea, but you can't be who you can't see, or you can't see who you can't be in, or maybe I mixed it up. You know what I did?
Yep.
You
If you
can't be
see
what
it, you can be it, right?
you
That's
see, you can
basically
be
what it is. If you can
right,
see it, you can be it. Yep.
right.
I'm
And
a
so
strong believer of that. So
it's a huge gift being there, especially like, I was talking about writing earlier. 9% of Latinos in the United States right now or 9% of teachers are Latinos as of 2020, and 2% are Latino males. And so even more so, there was a great, not just a great need, but a great gift to be able to be a Latino male, especially in elementary, where you can mold kids. You're not you when you get to high school, you're influencing kids, but when you're in elementary, you get to mold the world around them, and you have great power and a great responsibility to teach them how to think again, not what to think. And so I think there's a lot of great value there.
Yeah, and you can kind of help them develop the critical thinking skills that they need and will need to lean on once
Mhm.
they get older into the teen years. So, so you hit on something that I think, and I don't want it to go past because it was really valuable. Where you said when you were in Topeka in a grade school and you were teaching math, you said that you realized quickly that the kids needed to see that you cared, for them to be able to give you that trust.
Mm.
Um, what and so now you learn that as a young teacher. What advice would you give to teachers who are just starting out in regards to that kind of analogy or information, that whole trust factor?
Yeah. I If I could give one piece of advice, I think when especially for a new teacher, you're asked to do so much and your weight is heavy. And oftentimes people will ask you, what do you need? How can I help you? And most of the time you're drowning and you're like, I don't know what I need. But you have so many things you're asked to do. But at the end of the day, when you put your head on that pillow, we called it the pillow test. Like if everything I did today allows me to sleep with peace, maybe I'm doing the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
And oftentimes I failed the pillow test when my classroom became oriented around data and around student achievement on tests. That's when I
Mm-hmm.
often didn't have peace when my head hit the pillow. When my head hit the pillow was when I realized that when you form relationships with our kids, especially those in lower socioeconomic areas, and especially with students who, they're you're with them 8 hours a day, and they have a chance to trust you.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so much more good can come from that classroom because, again, like the quote always says, they're not going to really remember anything you taught them down the road, but they will remember how you treated them. And I think that would be my biggest thing because eventually, if you're God willing, teachers in a classroom for a long time. But if you do not, if you forget about the heart, because obviously we're head and heart, and I think we know that. But if we forget about the heart, um, nothing else matters, and your toolbox will be filled over time. But we've got to make sure we have the essential tools, which is ensuring that we're feeding that heart and that soul, and
Mm-hmm.
everything else will come.
Yeah, that's so true, and just fantastic advice. Um, let's kind of jump to some of the experiences that you had. So, you have been a football coach,
Mm,
at a couple of different schools. So, talk a little bit about, that aspect. I think that, um, that you're the first, football coach that I've, had, the opportunity to have this conversation with.
oh,
So,
wow.
tell me, how does, sports play into education, and where do you see kind of the, overlaps and similarities between the two?
I think sports is one of the greatest opportunities to get to know kids because you get to meet them outside the desk. And so that's when you meet kids outside the desk. I think sometimes us educators forget that our kids have completely full lives outside of school. We forget that when they go home, they're probably going to practice, they're eating dinner, they're fighting with their siblings, they're um, having different conversations and learning about life. I mean that's 5 to 6 hours when you get home is a completely different pace of life than most. And once you have kids, you realize that. I didn't know that at the time. I just assumed they had time for homework. Maybe they're just relaxing on their phones or something. But man, you get on the
That
football
probably
field.
happens too, just so
Yeah.
you know,
Oh, it does. Oh,
especially
it
as they get
does.
older.
Fortunately and unfortunately, but depending
Mhm,
on the situation. But
sure.
boy, when you get to meet kids outside the desk, you get to really know what's important to them because sometimes there's those kids in class that you can't get them to look at you for more than 10 seconds for a math lesson, but boy, you start talking about a play or showing them highlights and you've got their attention for an hour. um, and I to see how the brain just is so different on a football field. I always told everybody I was a football coach even when I was assistant principal at St. Joseph, and
Mhm.
um, I could have a really hard, challenging day, but when you got to the football field, I was happy again. I was never mad,
Hmm.
and you got to be free, and your passion became a huge part of it. And I think the I think I learned a lot of valuable lessons from coaching because I recognized you have to celebrate success, and I wasn't doing that in the classroom.
Ah,
I think at the beginning and from football, especially at Mill Valley, our Coach Joel Appleby, one of his big phrases was celebrate all the successes, even the little ones.
hmm,
And so I took into my classroom, honestly, the very next week, finding ways to celebrate the successes because, you can't just celebrate A's, you can't just celebrate students reaching their growth, but are their growth goals? But if they're growing or they're slowly progressing, like you've got to celebrate it. And if you can create a culture of success, a culture of celebrating, then students start, it's like a drug, kids start really getting motivated not by just hitting the goals, but by growing towards it slowly. And it's a process. And so I think sports taught me a lot about the classroom. It taught me a lot about how to coach up our students in the classroom to celebrate their success, even if it's small, and to not worry so much about where we were going to be, but to really focus more on the process of learning. And I think that's greatly affected even my own administrative philosophies of seeing things as a process, not just focusing on the goal itself.
Yeah, no. So those incremental steps along the way and how that impact can happen, I think is key. I heard a great analogy. You probably know who Cam Newton is,
Oh yeah.
and so he has a podcast, and I can't remember the person who was on his show, but he talked about the differences in regards to how varying communities look at sports and how and what the lessons they take away from engagement of sports. And some take away the team building, the discipline of waking up early in the morning
Mhm.
and going to practices during the summertime when it's hot or when it's late, or all of that. So they the collaboration, the team building, the discipline, and they take that in some communities and take that and use them in other ways, kind of put them in their toolbox. But then he said in some other communities it's just focused on how they can make it to the NFL or the
Oh
NBA
yeah.
or the Premier Soccer or MLB or what have you. And so, how do you see as a coach and as a teacher, what did you instill in your young people that were on the field to understand the importance of the sport
Mhm.
and how they can use that skill set?
Yeah. No, that's a great question. Probably focus on the details. I think there's a lot of crossover with sports in the classroom. I still think today. One example is when I was at St. Joseph Catholic school, we wore uniforms when I was assistant principal, right? And the kids, my first day I walked in, I saw a lot of kids with their uniforms untucked, their shirts untucked. And it was really small, really, really tiny. But it used to drive me nuts because I saw that it was in the handbook. And I was like, hey guys, you need to tuck your shirts. And so one of the quotes the kids used to always say, they'd see Mr. Gallegos walking down the hall, and I'd just see him just tucking in their shirts before I said anything. And I always think the same for football. We were always really big on uniformity with, we had to let our kids know what the expectations were for the smallest things,
Mhm.
because if you could follow the smallest things, everything else became easy. And
Mhm.
so, there's that book, and it's called "If You Want to Change the World, Make Your Bed."
Yes, by McCaffrey.
Yes, yes. And I quoted the heck out of that. Like, hey guys, if we want to be successful today, we got to make it. We got to make our bed. We got to tuck in our shirts, and we got to have our pencil. It's the same.
Oh,
You got to have your pencil, and you got to have it sharpened. You can't just be wait. You don't want to be the kid that you're 5 minutes in, and they're like, "Why aren't you writing?" Like, I don't have a pencil. Like it's the tiny little stuff that when we get after and we show that we have that high expectations for
mhm.
even the tiny things, then kids will they'll reach your expectations, especially if they are high. And I noticed that at the school, and then with football, especially with our kids, we'd always have them. We would watch film for an hour, 45 minutes to an hour every day.
Mhm.
I didn't always get to make it with after school, but our kids did, and then we'd ask for more. When they went home, we'd say, we expect you to watch 15 minutes at home. And then we'd check in every Thursday and see if they were meeting those needs. And, again, it's just in the small things, the color socks you wore, um, making sure you were like being on time was late, and being early was on time, making sure that the kids had clear understanding, because clear is kind. And I think
Yeah.
that was extremely important with sports and coaching and with our kids. So, and they had done that at Mill Valley long before me. They had won a couple state championships in a row before I even got there.
Yeah.
So I knew they were doing everything the right way.
Well, that is a great segue, and I'm laughing because I was a classroom teacher in a Catholic school, and tucking the shirt is so, and having the belt and all that kind of
Oh
stuff,
yeah.
or pulling down the skirts is another
Yes.
great one. But so let's talk about Mill Valley, and you just mentioned it, and then we're going to progress into the other two. But you talked about the first ring, or one of the rings. I shouldn't say the
Mhm.
first ring, but one of the rings that you achieved in 1 year. So, ladies and gentlemen, fellow educators, this is a guy who, in 1 calendar year, not even a full calendar year, got 3 rings going on. So, you mentioned one, Mill Valley, and you got a ring because of why?
Well, I guess it's easier to go in chronological order here.
Sure.
3 summers ago, this next July, had gotten and married my wife Audrey Gallegos, and um, she has been everything for us. She is 100% the reason that I'm able to do anything, because behind anybody that or is successful, that there's a beautiful wife that is 100% supporting. I think it was I remember there was a story about Pope John Paul meeting the president, and
Mhm.
he shook his hand and he was like, "All right, let me see." He's like, "I'd like to meet the woman who makes you successful." And he like moved him over, and then he talked to his wife for a long time,
Yeah.
and he had a longer conversation with her. And I think that probably fits my own narrative, because she's done everything and been extremely supportive. So as I spend all our money for my Baker doctorate, she she's supportive of everything. So very thankful for that. And then she allowed me to coach as well, give a lot of time to that in our first year of marriage. And we ended up winning the state championship. And it was the fourth in a row for Mel Valley. And then I would also, what the hour or two I had on the weekends left over, I would go and give tours for the Chiefs and do some pregame activations. And so we, help out on the field for halftime. And my job was fan development, which I also think is just I get paid to have fun.
Yeah.
And
And that's
we,
not a bad gig, right?
oh
You
no, I'm there for it. You had me at fun. So, no, when they beat the Eagles, I got another ring in February. So
There
three
you
in
go.
1 year, and life goes down from there. Maybe, I don't know, but
So July, the wedding, and that's the one I said that's probably the most important. But
yeah.
you got the wedding band, and then the end of the calendar year, the football for Mill Valley, right? State
Hmm.
championship, 5A. Is that
Hmm.
correct? 5A.
Good job. Yeah.
And then, hey, I told you I was a researcher, so I got to
Yeah.
do my research. And then you had the Super Bowl ring,
Uh-huh.
which all of those are fantastic, fantastic milestones, not only for yourself, but everybody in that circle for each one, and how they interconnect or intertwine. It's, you got to go for 5 rings at some point,
Yeah.
so that you can, have your own Olympic ring flag.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, so I mean, but think about how diverse and how along this wild spectrum of connectivity, of what you're talking about, but yet it's all connected or interlinked through a eternal circle. Right. I
Hmm.
mean, if you look, the whole idea of what a ring is that unity of eternal, no beginning, no end.
Hmm.
And I think that really is, if you think about education in that lane, how that can really work as far as the teacher who's in the front of the classroom when they engage with their student. It is everything about who they are and what they bring and their passion and caring and compassion to the classroom. So now that you are stepping into the role of a principal, talk to us a little bit about that journey. And simultaneously, you are working on your doctorate. So,
Hmm.
talk to us a little bit about that journey and where do you see yourself going down this path, as you continue on in your educational attainment and your career attainment. And
Yeah.
I'm blurred out in the background, so education and work attainments.
Yeah. No, I think, um, and I'll just start off with being a principal. I think I've been fortunate enough to learn from really great people around me. I met with my former principal this morning. Her name is Tara Hudson at Turner, and she's probably one of the strongest, most motivated principals ever. She would cuss me out and give me a hug in the same 2 minutes. So she was a fireball. And then my principal Kelsey McCauley at St. Joseph taught me how to be a servant first, and so completely different spectrums of leadership. And then again, my coach at Mill Valley, I looked. He was, um, you know, he was just organized and had high expectations, and he didn't say a lot because when he spoke, you listened, and he meant what he said. And so, taking all those things into leadership, I've been graced to learn about leadership isn't first off about serving. And I think I think Simon Sinek says something about not talking about what you do right away when you meet somebody and trying to find another way to say it. And I've always figured that when I try not to say I'm a principal to anybody first, because I always say my number one job in this in a school is to support teachers. Nothing else. It's not about instructional leadership and having good relationships with the kids are all important, and ensuring that their safety is a priority. That is a job. But if I don't support teachers, your teachers can't support kids. And so I learned very early on that was extremely important. And then uh, especially when you get to be in a school like Black Bob is, I'm excited to be there because it is a dual immersion program. And I had been able to look at a few different schools. And once I heard Black Bob, my heart jumped, especially hearing that it was a Spanish immersion school. And I knew that was when they said that, they had me on the hook. They didn't know it at the time, but they had me. And, it's a great time to be a Latino in education. And, as I'm writing my dissertation on Latino teachers' perceptions of Latino student support in the KC Metro, we have more Latinos than ever before. And in fact, there's almost a 200% increase since 1980 to 2020. And so for the first time, the kids that we saw in those classrooms, those kids in the classrooms becoming teachers now, we get to hear a voice on, areas maybe they didn't get taught. I mean, I talked to you about how I was taught what to think, not how to think, until I got, into college. And I see our teachers now who are young Latino teachers who, have an understanding of la cultura. They have an understanding of, society in the United States and cultural norms, and they're finding ways to bridge that. And we have so many because we have our pioneers, and Dr. Valdez, like you're one of them. When you look at our people who, they've been doing it, they've done it for 30, 40 years. And now we're hitting a new generation that, is able to be led, because I'm sure that you didn't, even people, my mentors didn't have mentors. And so I see that now I'm graced to have mentors. And that's why I say it's a very exciting time to be a Latino teacher in the United States, because now that the United States is almost 20% Latino in our schools, we have 9% that are representing, but there's still a disparity. And so as we continue to grow and to meet that, and we have more advocates and opportunities like right now in this moment, to have more Latinos that are talking about their experience and talking about the joy that it gives them. Hopefully we're continuing to feed that fire that's there. And so great. I'm very lucky, very thankful to be where I'm at right now.
That's fabulous. And thank you very much for sharing all of that with us. Before I forget this, let's talk a little bit about your dissertation. You mentioned the topic, and you said what you were working on. Talk to us a little, because I promised that I would help you get
Yes.
your
Plug it.
audience, your folks to share or to interview. I'm sorry. So talk a little bit about that.
No, I am going to be reaching out to teachers in the KC Metro. I would like to get a diverse representation of teachers from where they're teaching at. So
Okay.
private, charter, public, diverse, non-diverse, low socioeconomic, a high affluent area, teachers that are serving in all different types of schools. I would love to hear from Latino teachers on their perceptions of how the building is supporting those students, the challenges that they're identifying, and then recommendations that they would have for improving the educational system in the area. And so I hope to get really good feedback from those teachers. I'm open from 10 to 15 teachers would be ideal. So hopefully I can share this with them, that I would love to have their voice and to hear what their experience has been.
Okay. So LAC people, LAC land, if you are an educator and you're watching this video right now, and you can contact me. My email is anna@latinxedco.org. That's Anna, ANA, at latinxedco.org. send me a note saying you heard this interview with Mr. Gallegos and that you would love to be a part of his dissertation. As somebody who's gone through this, and I did interviews with mine as well,
Mhm.
we really, really, really need to have an authentic voice
Yes.
of educators to be able to capture that data. Thank you, Sebastian. Capture that data so that it can go into his research. So drop me a line via email and say, I'm really interested. I'd love to participate. And I will get you connected to Mr. Gallegos so that you can be a part of his dissertation interview. And what else would be helpful for you, Cruz, as you go through this journey of the whole dissertation process?
All right. No, I think getting your voice, getting an email, getting an opportunity to connect and to have coffee with you and to hear your experience is going to be the most helpful, especially as we look um, to truly represent what the KC Metro and our teachers' experiences, whether they're on the Kansas or Missouri side. That would be incredible. So
Okay, great. Somebody's asked me to put them in the comments. I would, but I am a newbie to StreamYard, and I'm afraid to hit something. So it's scrolling across the bottom, or it was scrolling across the bottom of the screen. There you go. Thank you. So you can see that at the bottom there, or now it's in the chat. So that you can send me that information. I'll get it to Cruz, and then you'll be able to have that information or have those conversations with him. Before we go, because we are at our time, is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, Cruz, as you make this journey? You've got 3 more weeks left of June, and then you're going to be the new principal of Black Bob. You've got this incredible journey in front of you in regards to your dissertation. We talked about the 3 rings, your connection to Michoacan. What else is it that you want to walk away and from this conversation and leave with folks that can be a part of it?
yeah, no, I want people to understand that for a long time, I mean, I say a long time, it was 4 years I was in a classroom. I did not meet, I didn't meet another Latino teacher for a couple of years. And then I was able to teach with my friend Ricky Gutierrez, who was part of the K-State group that was called, it was called Call Me Mister, which was a program for men of color that we're teaching. And there are a lot of Latinos in there and a lot of men of color. And when I was able to teach with him, that was the first time I felt connected. The music I would play in class, the way that I would talk or even just make fun of our students sometimes, everything. I just felt very seen. And in
Mm,
this world, we social media and a lot of things are beautiful, but they can sometimes isolate us.
yes,
And in this world, we so much need true connection. And sometimes when you're able to meet with other Latinos, there's just a part of you, and you know this, Dr. Valdez, but sometimes when you're able to talk about la cultura and you're able to talk about educación and just these realities, there's parts of your heart that are unlocked. And I think it's so important to continue to work and connect with each other because I'm sure I'll meet teachers from very different backgrounds as we write this dissertation, but um, I am so excited to connect to so we can continue to share ideas, our perspectives, and our insights because there's a very different aspect to the way that you teach and the way you view the world from a Latino perspective, and it's a beautiful one to share as well. So very thankful for that. Thank you for letting me say that.
absolutely, and thank you for sharing that. That's one of the reason why we do this is that our Latino brethren and sisterhood out there need to feel connected. And that was one more connection that I forgot. We both are Kansas State grads. So congratulations on all of your success and your journey. I'm really excited to have met you and had this conversation with you. Again, it's if you would like to be a part of soon to be Dr. Cruz Gallegos dissertation, please just drop me an email and I will get you connected. Before we go, I want to say again, congratulations and all the best for your upcoming academic year. and hope to catch you soon at some type of activity or event. But thank you so much for sharing everything with us. It's such a pleasure, and thank you for being a part of our community.
Thank you guys for giving a voice to our area and all the Latinos here. It means a lot. I love it. I appreciate it very much.
Fantastic, fantastic. And just to everyone else, if you are available on June 20th, we are having our end of year teacher celebration, kicking off with a pizza party at Northeast Pizza, which is in our old office space at 2201 Lexington. And then we're having a movie night. Captain America will be played here at the studios of LEC at 2301 Lexington. So if you can make it out on June 20th, we'd love to have you join us for a teacher end of year celebration to say woohoo for at least a couple of months. And then we're all back into the classroom come August. So thanks again, Cruz. It was a pleasure to meet you. And I hope to see everyone on June 20th. Thanks and have a fantastic day.
Thank you.
Bye.